Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side. Day we hustle, but the night we know that they ride or die. I'm a OG boy. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side. Day we hustle, but the night we boys by my side. Know that they ride or die. My name came up a lot, it sounds more when I was not.
Hello, everybody. We're back again. This is Fire, and with my man Kanan Powers here, back at you for another session. Today, we're going to be talking about a reparations issue of Black America. But to get things started, to kick it off, anything you want to say, Kanan?
No, I'm just it's good that we finally got back into the groove of things, but yeah, we just gonna dive right into it. So
All right, all right. Well, we got some trending topics that we're going to talk about for you guys. Just to let you know some things. Do you want to introduce what those topics are?
yeah, so some of the topics that I came across just on social media, some of the things that kind of popped up on Twitter and whatnot is Candace Owens. That's a name that constantly pops up. She recently has been sued for defamation of character by a lady named Kimberly Clackett. I'm not sure if I pronounced her name right, but she's basically a Maryland council person, I believe, former Republican congressional candidate in Maryland is suing Candace Owens, basically.
Okay. So she
Um,
did file a defamation suit against
yeah,
Candace.
$20 million, $20 million in damages over an Instagram video that Candace Owens made back in June. And basically, Candace Owens said that this lady was a madam at a strip club, and that she was involved in money laundering and illegal drug use and all these things, and it actually damaged this lady's reputation where she lost endorsements and funding. So she actually did lose money. She was a politician, so that's a huge, your character is they find anything, you going down basically. So this
Okay.
definitely impacted her. So now it's just gonna be a matter of if she can prove if those statements are true or not. So I
Meaning
think that
if Candace, meaning if Candace Owens can prove they're true.
Yeah, I think that that's what it's going to boil down to. Or if the lady herself can prove that it's not true.
That is false. Cool.
So,
Okay.
that's just kind of interesting, but it just kind of her name pops up a lot, basically, Candace Owens. And I personally have listened to some of her content. I don't think that she is as bad as a lot of people make her out to be, but she definitely has a different perspective and point of view. I disagree with probably like 90% of what she says in most cases. However, I think that it's healthy for people to have, for Black people to have two different points of views and be able to talk through these type of problems without making them um, detrimental or canceling people or not wanting them to speak. So it's kind of a she's kind of a tricky person in my opinion. Have you listened to much of her content?
I have to say I have. Usually she sort of comes up on those sort of sound bites or those trending topics. Usually, in my opinion, it's related to a lot of sensationalism. And
Hmm.
I'm not sure that's sort of the gist I got from her off the bat. I don't know if she says and does things to remain sort of relevant and have sensationalism and controversy surrounding her name because
Mm.
in this day and age, it seems like if even in the political arena, if you can manage to have controversy and sensationalism and you get a lot of clicks and views, somehow that translates to, capital, to your
True.
name, your brand, your capital. So I take a lot of what people say with a grain of salt, because it's hard to, I have to go back later and try to figure out, okay, what do they mean? What is practical? Is that really something that's practical? Or is it just a trending topic that, if I get all riled up and concerned about it today, in another couple of weeks,
Right.
there'll be something different. So, but
True.
I agree with you in the sense of, you know, we have to be able to either just understand and listen to what a person is saying and dissect it logically to see if it makes sense or if it will be good, and not just dismiss it like ad hoc, like offhand, just
Hmm.
dismiss it because the person is either a Republican or they are, whatever the case may be, because we can, with logic and reason, just sort of determine if a person is making sense. And then
Hmm.
if they're not, we can always, turn the dial.
Right.
So,
Easy. All right, so we're gonna cool. I'm kind of moving on. Another trending topic was this crate challenge. I don't know if you heard about it or seen any videos, but
yeah,
it's just another one of those challenges. And my whole thing about the challenge culture is it's really at this point it's so obvious that it's just another way to kind of distract people because certain things trend and I really don't know why or how. But at the end of the day, it's like you never really get too much positive things to trend or people to challenge. You could try to get people to support certain businesses or types of people, and you can never really get people to commit to those challenges. But this crate thing got people going. So,
yeah.
what's your take on people basically spending their free time creating ways to injure themselves?
Well, I got this on the crate challenge, man, and it's just pulled it offline. And these are medical professionals and pundits that say, and this is that I quote, injuries, and this is pertaining to this crate challenge. And just real quick, what we're talking about is the latest trend that is on TikTok, for example, and online. If you don't know, people are stacking milk crates or crates, which are these plastic crates that are box shaped. They're stacking them so that they're forming sort of a staircase or an escalating height. And they go from one crate and they stack. I think I've seen 6 or 7, maybe even. And then they taper down again to one crate on the other side. So, sort of like this staircase that rises and goes down. Only these crates aren't secure. And the goal is the person will walk across, they'll walk up one side, and then the goal is to successfully walk down the other side without falling. Obviously, once you get to, like, 4 or 5 crates stacked, it's extremely unstable. And most of the time, these people are falling. So,
Mm.
that being said, professionals warn, they say injuries can include broken wrists, shoulder dislocations, ACL and meniscus tears, as well as life threatening conditions like spinal cord injuries. Many also took to Twitter to share how the videos are giving them anxiety and they would not attempt it. Videos of folks doing the milk crate challenge give me anxiety. This is a quote from a healthcare professional. Here's the thing, and I know we had talked about this earlier. There was a drive-by shooting while some brothers was doing one of these crate challenges. And I
Oh
think it
wow.
was in Louisiana. And the dude was, he was all the way up on one of the crates. He's sort of rocking, and then all of a sudden, the guy that's filming went to start ducking because you hear gunshots. So the whole video, the perspective moves to like you're ducked behind a car because the person with the camera, they duck.
Hmm.
Turns out, oh man, they caught these dudes slipping. The dude was the one guy was right up on top of the crates trying to balance, and 3 people lost their lives in this drive-by.
Wow.
And
That's sad.
the last thing I have on it is, even if you're not, if you don't got people looking for you in the streets, even so, why? Right? Why?
Hmm.
And to me, it's like, especially Black folks, if you statistically speaking, if we the least likely to have insurance, least likely to have nest eggs and savings accounts to cover us in the event of injury. Why would you climb on a stack of milk crates, and take a risk at severe injury or death?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And those things is like a crate is like a foot tall. So I mean, you think if you stacking about six of them, that's pretty high. As far as to take a fall from it, like if you put it all together, it don't make sense.
No.
It's not even that entertaining or fun that you can get out of it. Maybe if it was two or three, even that'll be make more sense. But I mean,
Well,
this
for
is kind
not
of risky.
when you say it's not fun or entertaining, then in your opinion, what's the motivator behind that? What gets people to do that?
That's a good question. Because it can only be my opinion, but I think we kind of touched on this too. Is like just sheer boredom, and people not applying that energy into more constructive things. But I don't think that they really are enjoying it as much as it trends. So you see the
Ah,
trends and you see the videos, but I think the vast majority of people are steering away from it because they see how ridiculous it is. But if they got about 10 videos out there, that's enough to make it seem like this is something that everybody's doing all over the world and
right.
challenging. And I'm like, I don't really think that many people are entertained by it, but the very few that get caught up in it, I think is just out of sheer boredom.
Okay. Well, that's a good conversation to have because some of the implications of that statement you made would infer or would insinuate that social media also has a hand in sort of manipulating what people perceive as trending or acceptable,
Hmm.
or even if there are that many organic clicks on a video, like you see 12 million clicks on a video, and part of that is well, almost none of it would be the person searching out the topic,
Hmm.
or much of it is not. A lot of it is what they decide to offer up on the screens and on the
Exactly.
feeds when you're not even looking for it. So
Exactly. So yeah, that's kind of I don't know. That's kind of my take on that. But yeah, if you unless you got something else to say about it, I was going to probably just move on to the next topic. But yeah, just I would advise people to not do that challenge.
right. What's next?
But so moving on, the next thing was I don't know if people are familiar with the Breakfast Club, but they kind of back in rotation as far as trending topics. About 4 days ago, I believe Charlemagne the God is what he goes by. Made comments in reference to something that was said by older rapper named Turk from a rap group Cash Money, and basically what they were talking about is males playing what they call quote finger quote um gay games. And Turk, the rapper, actually mentioned about these games being played in prison or in jail. And I believe that Charlemagne the God from the Breakfast Club talked about it just generally as males playing these games casually and normalizing kind of this idea that males play gay games a lot. And he went on talking about how he participates in these games. Um, he kind of called out DJ Envy, who was another host on the Breakfast Club, about him playing the games and them playing the games together. They mentioned listening to certain songs together and basically doing gay stuff, but not being gay, air quotes. Um, However, they play these games and they say that he basically was saying it's okay and it's normal and he's seen it happen. But he kind of tried to put it on the entire black male population like this is something that we all do, which is extremely false. And a lot of people were commenting on his comments on social media like Twitter, and basically there was a lot of people that felt because of his platform and who he is, he really depicts black males in a negative light overall because he really doesn't speak for the general mindset of a black male. However, he has a huge platform. And in American society, what he says is just going to carry weight as far as the black male image.
Yeah. Uh, I saw something on that too, man. And I think it's very problematic on many levels, like in my opinion, because he is an individual, and whether he plays, gay games between himself or DJ Envy or whoever, uh, that's an individual. Those two are individuals, and I think it's problematic in the sense that, uh, like you said, obviously you can't have an individual that speaks for masses,
Hmm.
and the problem is I as a man can dismiss what he's saying, right? Because it has nothing to do with me. But then on the other hand, the problem I have is that when I travel, when I go out, when I engage people in the real world, I run the risk of engaging people who have been subjected to this sort of propaganda.
Hmm.
And the problem is, there are many people who are not independent thinkers, they're not critical thinkers. And they do look at these sort of propaganda mouthpieces and they project that on, they buy into these stereotypes. And at one point, well, it seems like they're trying to create a new normalized stereotype, which is that of a homosexual black male.
Hmm.
By using people like this Charlemagne character, now you have a problem in that he is backed up by, big money, industry, communications moguls, machines. He's got the Breakfast Club, and it seems like they can sort of make these statements without real repercussions. They can
Hmm.
sort of do things and engage in uncomfortable conversations, can sort of say things without facing the same sort of punishment or repercussions like that an average person would face.
Actually, I sniffed your chair last time you was
You're a
here.
sick person.
I know. I did.
You're a
I couldn't
sick
help it.
person.
I mean,
Yo, just left. Never fails. Come on, y'all. Picture.
I was sniffing the seat.
You and I probably would face more strikes and critiques from YouTube, depending on what we say on this,
Right.
versus what this guy says in a syndicated, national radio platform.
Yep. No, that's real true. And I think that it's worse. It's always worse for black people who understand what we actually go through. So it wouldn't be problematic if people could look at us as individuals, but we know that that's not the case. So we always have to think on another level because this is something that other people will watch and then they're just gonna say, "Oh yeah, he speak for all black males," because that's another way to kind of dilute black narratives and try to group us all in one category like we all think alike and like animals they all do the same thing and think the same way, so it all ties into that idea of
Right.
black people, and that's why it's problematic for us. But if we didn't have to face those type of challenges, we wouldn't care as much when people made those kind of comments because we would just say, "Oh, that's just him." That's
Right.
one person. But we know that when we go to a job interview or whatever, people are gonna bring that stereotype to the with us. They're gonna put that on us. So when we walk in the door, people have already come up with an idea of what we are as soon as they see we black. Oh, this is a black male. I know what he's about because I
Yeah.
watch the Breakfast Club. That's
Right.
kind of how they do us. So it's like, but you don't take the time out to actually listen, and that's how a lot of people get their feelings hurt. That's why a lot of black males wind up in jobless or anything, because once they find out that you are an individual, and you don't fit this stereotype, they almost want to push you out because
Yeah.
then we become the toxic males.
Right. Right. And like you said, it's problematic enough when you have grown-ups that sort of get these ideals about us. Whereas with a grown-up, you can go in and you can, hopefully stand on your merit, your principles, show who you are. Um, and if there's a chance of correcting that mentality and that falsehood, that's one thing. But when you have an entire generation, because the Breakfast Club, in large part, even though I think DJ Envy, Charlemagne, and Angela Yee, they're more, themselves, they're more middle aged people. I think that the clout that the Breakfast Club has and does hold with the younger generations
Hmm.
is an entire another that's another category of problems, because people that are maybe 25 and younger even are not always capable of sort of separating those ideas of between entertainment and reality
Hmm.
and suggestions versus their own ideals that they have natively in their own mind. Like, what is their own idea? Where are their sort of urges and ideas coming from versus those that are being constantly suggested to them.
Hmm.
And I think when you have sort of these mouthpieces in the hip hop sphere, it's more geared toward and trendy spheres that are geared more towards young people. They're geared towards an even less, a more defenseless mindset.
Facts. I totally agree with that. All right,
Yes, sir.
that's kind of it for like some of the main things that I just kind of saw as I was browsing through social media. So we'll keep dropping those off for the listeners with our episodes, but make sure y'all comment on these topics, give us feedback on what y'all think, and we just gonna push forward.
All right. That being said, reparations for slavery in the United States.
Mm,
This is the quintessential topic and discussion that won't die. And in my opinion, neither should it. It's generational, it's a legacy. And for now, I'm going to let you go ahead and take some time and
cool.
speak your piece on this.
All right, so reparations. Basically, I'm gonna just do kind of pros and cons of what I think reparations bring to the table. Reparations, if given to the black community or to anybody, but we talking about black people specifically, this is a platform that could create economic stability. Economic stability um, will, in a way, create jobs, which and also better education because you have the funds to do things that you're not allowed to do when you don't have that economic stability. And from that, you naturally form communities when you have economic stability, and when you form communities, uh, acts of violence tend to reduce. It also, when you have communities and lower acts of violence, it reduces stress, and stress improves health. And the reason I break it down like that is because a lot of times I hear people talk about reparations and they only say, well, what is money going to do? Money is just money. It's not always about money, but realistically, monetary reparations is uh is critical because, like I said, once you create that economic stability by creating jobs and bettering education, all of the other things that come with those things literally will impact black people on a health level. So people need to understand that when you don't have these things, that impacts your direct health when you live in communities or neighborhoods that have high acts of violence, because now you're more stressed, and we know that stress breaks down the health, and you have less focus in school, and all of those things. So those are the pros of reparations. The cons, I think, are that there's always a potential for reparations being unfairly distributed because of racism, which could cause a false sense of correcting a narrative, um, or correcting the impact of slavery and systematic racism against blacks. So if it's not fairly distributed, then it really does nothing for them to just put it on paper and say that this was given, but then kind of do like they did with the Native American benefits. They let Europeans or Caucasians, they let them get those benefits by claiming that they were Native American, even if they didn't have Native American in their blood at all. A lot of times they were able to get those benefits. Another con is that I think it will change the face of black people, like I mentioned, as an attempt to cheat the true black people out of receiving those benefits. And it can also increase hate crimes towards blacks if they actually gave it to black people, because a lot of times when black people receive any kind of benefit from the government or any way, shape, or form, you get this huge um, anger rise out of racist white people, and they basically want to burn things down, and they want to, they basically want to harm black people because they feel like black people don't deserve anything, and it gets that deep. So that's kind of my take on reparations, and I'll let you kind of carry it from there if you want to hit a different angle, or we could touch base on what I talked about a little later.
All right, cool. Let me unmute myself there. All right, yeah, man. Thanks. So yeah, I agree with what you said. Um, I wanted to start out with essentially like a definition of reparations. This is sort of a rough definition, so that I can clarify like what is meant by reparations. Because I think often what we wind up doing is when we say reparations in a political context, in the context of this country and people groups, we immediately think of money and checks, uh, or cash or a handout or payout. But the actual definition of reparations, okay, and this is a quote, myself: to make whole, to repair, as in something or someone damaged due to violence or other misfortune. This pertains to any recognizable damage, be it physical, psychological, social, emotional, etc. So obviously, in order for something to be in need of repair, there's a damage there. Now, in the context of a capitalistic society where everything depends on money, or your home, your ability to have a roof over your head, your ability to feed your children, yourself, your ability to get an education. In a capitalistic society, money is so fundamental. And as you look on those, pieces of paper, it says, "In this God we trust." Every money is foundational. So is it possible to heal or repair a being in the context of a capitalistic society without, dealing with capitalism? It's not possible. So that being said, reparations past, present, and future. Something on the past. The importance of knowing history is to not live in a mental bubble. And I say that because reparations is not some new radical ideal. People hear it and they think immediately, oh, it just sort of sprouted out of nowhere, or they murdered George Floyd and now, Black Lives Matters wants reparations. Well, the first recorded case was a Belinda Royale in 1983, and that was in the form of a pension. So even before the end of slavery, it was common sense, and it was also, an idea kicked around in think tanks and on higher levels of government and politics that reparations was a feasible thing. When we were emancipated, when our ancestors were emancipated, there was a thing called the Negro problem. You had a multitude, generations of people that were suddenly, quote unquote, freed, but they had been kept in bondage, so they had no land, no education, no intellectual capital, no money, no economic capital. And so to unleash them into society was a big part of what they defined as the Negro problem then. And that meant these people were going to be vagabonds, they're going to be homeless, or they're going to turn to, a sub economy or a dark economy to try and support themselves. Now, reparations then would have solved a huge part of the Negro problem. So that being said, the 1865 Special Field Order number 15, the famed 40 acres and a mule, it was an attempt to help newly freed slaves integrate into society and accumulate wealth. But even then, when we were just on the heels of slavery, the sort of the same arguments you hear today were put up back then, except that they couldn't say it was so long ago in the past. They did say get over it. They did say it's over with. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And we're talking in 1865. This is like in the throes of the Civil War, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the bootstraps arguments and let go of the past argument was valid then, or I mean, and it was an argument then. Uh, Reparations present. So ultimately, the 40 acres and a mule obviously was reversed by President Andrew Johnson, who gave the land back to the former Confederate owners. And so, that being said, reparations present, um, you know, it's a fallacy to think that reparations is only due for the atrocities of chattel slavery and the economic wealth that are the ill-gotten gains that this country took. Discrimination and institutionalized racism and practices against Black Americans did not stop after Emancipation Proclamation or even the Civil War. The Black Codes, Jim Crow, and the lynching era of terrorism are some of the better known eras of racial tyranny and terrorism. The sprawling poverty pursued Black Americans even to the northern states once it became legal for Blacks to even travel from the South. Remember, it was illegal for our ancestors to even leave the South for a while. They were forced to stay there and work for the previous slave owners. So wherever the Negro reared his pleading head, there also arose the bludgeoning policies such as sundown towns, redlining, and discrimination in federal home loans. Redlining obviously is not granting Black, amongst other things, is not granting loans from private industries and even federal loans, FHA loans to Black people when they wanted to live in certain upscale areas of town or with good property. They'd either deny those loans, and through a coercion of policing, the denial of loans, and white flight, they would either cause Blacks to not be able to live in certain areas or to leave certain areas, or cause them to degrade. But what's the town in Chicago? The district of North Lawndale in Chicago, where redlining was the strongest, is the poorest neighborhood in the city, with an unemployment rate of 18.6% and 42% of residents living below the poverty line. That's present, and it's directly tied to redlining. So the whole argument that slavery is so long ago, and we only hinge our argument for reparative justice on slavery, is fallacious. And it's a popular argument that people just throw up. Oh, slavery was so long ago. When in fact, you can argue that at least 50% of the damage is done is post-slavery. So even Roosevelt's New Deal programs were applied discriminatorily against Black Americans, leaving them out of the boat and clenching for dear life rafts as the rising tide of federal prosperity lifted the country from the Great Depression. But history is a timeline that runs in cycles, and today's slavery could be said to be as technologically advanced as any iPhone made in prison by prison labor. This comes from a Wikipedia article that I cite. Let's see. 1 second, bro.
No, that's cool. That actually goes into a lot of what I was saying, though, um, because you're touching base on a lot of the cons that I mentioned anyway, which is good. With the unfair distribution of reparations and how you see this outlet or this backlash when people even talk about reparations for Black people, it enrages a certain group of people, which
Right.
I think increases those hate crimes and so forth. So I'll give you a minute to try to get a hold of that article. But for the listeners out there, we really are just trying to talk about reparations in general, um, and show people that it's bigger than just getting money, really. And it's something that this country pretty much bases their financial principles off of compensating people when they're wrong. If you get in a car accident or wrongful death, people know that insurance covers it. That's a way of repairing the damages that was lost, like we talked about Candace Owens. So for people to actually speak against reparations when it comes to black is almost a sign of racism in itself, in my opinion.
Yeah, facts, man. Facts. Well, what I basically wanted to say on that was that where I left off, prison is just an example of uh, it's a method that was started back in the era of black codes. This was post-slavery, where they basically studied Black American habits and lifestyles and then criminalized as much of that as possible. So you had a lot of newly freed slaves that were homeless essentially. They didn't own the land and they were jobless essentially because they had been slaves, obviously. So you had a lot of laws that were enacted then against trespassing, against being a vagabond, against being in public without proof of gainful employment. And then they would lock that black male up, usually it's black males, lock them up and force them to work on chain gangs, and then they were also available for convict leasing. So they had, a wealthy white landowner, previous slave owner, or any industry could come along and say, we need, 10 Negroes to lay this railroad track or break this rock up. And then the jail would essentially, that county would take money and lease those humans out to perform that work, because it was only illegal to have slavery, but it was not illegal to enslave someone that had been duly convicted of a crime, which is still the case. So
Right.
fast forwarding nowadays, when you look at what is legal and illegal, and for the longest, marijuana was illegal. Bill Clinton instituted a three strikes law. Reagan announced a war on drugs at a time when drug usage was at its lowest in the black community. He launched a war on drugs, and a lot of people wound up getting locked up for what is now considered recreational drug usage. So
Hmm.
you got a lot of black folks that were caught with marijuana or small amounts of drugs and given baseball and football numbers.
Hmm.
So you have a lot of private industries that are still profiting off of forced labor and coerced and forced labor. Uh, and so yeah, reparations future, man. I'll wrap up here. I wanted to just talking about the fact that reparations is not a new thing and
Hmm.
it's not an impossible thing either. And I cite this article here where you have black farmers. The USDA, this is off an article online, USDA is set to give black farmers debt relief. They've heard that one before. This article is dated June 4th, 2021. And quick read here. It's farmers of color are set to get some unprecedented debt relief starting this month from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The latest federal COVID aid package includes an estimated $4 billion for the USDA to wipe away these farmers' debts. And this is a quote from the article here. It's an unprecedented congressional mandate to make up for the damage that decades of lending discrimination has had on farmers of color. The distrust runs so deep that the department has been dubbed, quote unquote, the last plantation. So reparations, we have to understand there's a difference between practicality and reality. What can be done in reality and what must be done to heal the country versus what the propaganda, what they'll say to shoot things down and to keep people confused. I think, in my opinion, reparations is necessary. Anytime you have a damage, you must repair it. So, that being said, reparations future, uh, I just asked the question, is the window of time for reparations closing? As the culture becomes more genetically and ideologically integrated with each passing generation, will the population cease to care about and entertain the idea? I guess, but I don't guess that the future will depend on us. While we demand what is due, we don't stop making it ourselves. Like the case of the Black farmers, we must demand it while we plant and grow on our own. So,
No, that's good, man. I agree, and I think just to throw out a book of reference, if you are kind of unfamiliar with why you think reparations is necessary, a good book to read, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. It really talks a lot about slavery and mass incarceration and all of the stuff in between, so that people can understand that it's not just about slavery. So again, this is Michelle Alexander. She's an associate professor of law at Ohio State University, and she wrote a book titled The New Jim Crow: Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. So it'll kind of just reinforce why reparations is actually necessary. So yeah, so with my conclusion, I kind of wrap it up on my end and say that I fully support reparations. I do think that it's absolutely necessary. Um, my biggest concern about it is the distribution of reparations. That's kind of my focal point. I'm not really in the argument of if we should get it or not, because like I said, I fully support it for black people. But I do want it to be distributed to black people and the black people who have suffered the most, and not just anybody who feels like they got a little black in them. So technically they can claim it. I know that's gonna happen to an extent, but overall, the vast majority of reparation distribution, I would like to see it go to black people. So that's kind of my conclusion on reparations.
all right, I agree, man. And just like you said, uh, when you talk about reparations for Native Americans, for example, we know there was a whole, bunch of $5 Indians and people jumping on that. Some of them were successful, some of them got discounted, but the country never said, oh, because there's a bunch of $5 Indians, we're not going to pay Native Americans or make it right, you
Hmm.
know. But,
Yep.
and for some reason with us, that becomes a game stopper, I guess.
Yeah. Or they think we're gonna all go to Walmart and buy donuts, and which is our prerogative too. But at the end of the
That's
day, we obviously ain't that slow because that's why they hesitant to give it.
exactly. So yeah, man, well said. Just what I have in closing, I just say, in my opinion, I think that it's necessary, not from an emotional argument, not from a self-serving argument, not even off of just, I just think practically speaking, it'll come down to deciding if a wrong was done, and if so, the wrong needs to be righted, not just on moral grounds, but in practicality, right? The arguments against reparations are literally arguing against repairing and being made whole. And how do you formulate arguments like that work in reality? Yeah, they can work on Twitter and on campaign slogans and in people's feelings, but do they work in reality as the country is facing, economic crisis and inequality is being torn apart? So the laws and complications will then be mere problems to solve and to overcome once we make up our minds. Often these subsequent problems and issues are used to distort the basic reality that a grave wrong was done and continues to be done. Again, no eye looks at cancer in the feet and says, let them take care of it themselves. To hell with them, feet, because the spread will inevitably affect the entire body. Ourselves, our communities, and the entire country will stand to gain from reparations.
Facts.
Big facts.
Yep. So to all the listeners out there, go ahead and comment, weigh in on this. We want to hear y'all opinions. Hit the subscribe button. Look at me, I'm fumbling. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and keep listening, man. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate you, and we'll be standing by. Peace.
Peace.